Welcome to This Explainer. As a founder who's spent well over 20 years building teams and running operational systems, I find myself having the exact same conversation over and over again, with students, with parents, and with fellow business leaders. Everyone is asking the same thing. If AI is getting more powerful every single year, what's actually going to make people employable in the future? So today, we're going to just cut right through the hype. We're putting the buzzwords aside, and we're going to take a calm, grounded look at the structural reality of what's happening in the job market right now.
I want you to really sit with this question for a second. Every single year, millions of students walk across a stage and get a degree. Honestly, we have more access to education, more online tutorials, and more raw information than at any point in human history. And yet, if you talk to any founder, any head of operations, or any hiring manager, they'll tell you that finding capable, job-ready talent is incredibly difficult. It's a staggering disconnect. But here's the thing. We aren't dealing with a lack of intelligence, and we certainly aren't dealing with a lack of degrees. So what exactly are we missing?
Well, to understand the scale of this issue, we have to look at the baseline numbers. The Mercer India Graduate Skill Index for 2025 shows that only 54.81% of graduates meet baseline employability standards. That's barely half. And remember, this is before we even factor in the massive disruptions AI has caused over the last year. If nearly half of all graduates can't meet basic industry expectations today, we have to acknowledge that we don't have an intelligence problem, we have an execution gap. Our system is producing a lot of potential, but the market is absolutely starving for execution.
And that brings us to the core thesis of our discussion today. This is the crucial takeaway. AI is not creating the employability gap. It's really not. AI is just widening a gap that already existed. Artificial intelligence is simply acting as an accelerator. It's exposing a structural misalignment, one that's been there for years, between what our educational institutions are teaching and what real-world businesses actually require to function and grow. Okay, let's unpack this divergence. Think about how traditional education works. The system generally rewards remembering information, passing standardized exams, and completing highly structured assignments where the rules are clearly laid out for you. But modern industry rewards a completely different set of behaviors. It rewards solving messy, unpredictable problems. It rewards clear communication, taking total ownership of an outcome, adapting on the fly, and reliable execution. The friction we're seeing in the job market exists because these two systems are fundamentally moving in opposite directions.
Let me explain this from the perspective of an operator. When a business hires someone, they aren't just looking for technical knowledge. Technical skills? Those can be taught. What businesses really struggle to find is the ability to function when a path isn't pre-drawn. We're looking for follow-through. Can you take a vague task, make reasonable assumptions when you don't have all the info, and actually deliver? We're looking for communication under pressure. In a real business, how you communicate a delay often matters way more than the delay itself. We need independent learners, people who can figure things out without being sent to a formal training course. And above all, execution reliability. Just showing up and delivering, predictably. That right there is the hidden gap.
Now let's look at how AI is accelerating all of this. A recent study by Cognizant and Pearson found that 37% of entry-level tasks in India are already being performed by AI. Let that sink in for a moment. AI is efficiently handling the summaries, the first drafts, the basic coding, sorting the data, building the template presentations. Historically, those repetitive tasks were the training ground for fresh graduates. That's how you learn the business from the bottom up. But that training ground is actively being automated away. Which leads us to a really profound question. If AI makes processing information and basic routine execution completely abundant and cheap, what becomes scarce? In economics, value always shifts to whatever is scarce. If a machine can write the code or draft a report in 10 seconds, employers aren't going to pay a premium for a person who simply knows the syntax. The premium completely shifts. So what becomes scarce? It's deeply human traits, human judgment, taking absolute ownership of a final outcome, the grit required to execute something complex, strategic decision-making, and adaptability. AI overwhelmingly rewards the professional who knows how to ask a better question, who can validate the machine's output, interpret the nuance, and take real responsibility for the final delivery. Because at the end of the day, you cannot automate taking responsibility. And this perfectly illustrates a danger we call the tutorial trap. I see this all the time. Candidates are drowning in online certificates, treating them like digital trading cards. They've spent hundreds of hours passively watching coding tutorials or business courses. But compare that to someone who actually builds a real project independently. The passive consumer feels productive, but it's a trap. They're stuck in a very comfortable illusion. You see, perfectly mimicking a tutorial creates this dangerous illusion of competence. It works perfectly on your screen because the instructor already solved all the hidden errors before they hit record. But consuming information is definitely not the same as producing evidence. The second an employer sits you down and asks you to solve an original problem, where the variables aren't controlled, that illusion of competence completely shatters.
I really want you to remember this phrase. It is the absolute reality of the modern hiring market. Industry does not hire potential. Industry hires evidence. Certificates merely show that you were exposed to a topic. They basically prove you sat in a chair and watched a video. But completed projects, a visible portfolio, documented execution. That proves actual capability.
Let's look at a practical case study to make this real. Imagine you're the hiring manager. You're choosing between two candidates. Student A has 20 online certificates from very prestigious platforms, but 0 independent projects. Student B has maybe 5 projects, 1 internship, and they bring a portfolio with documented proof of the work they actually built. I can tell you unequivocally, every founder, every HR professional, and every operations lead is going to choose Student B. Student B doesn't just promise potential. They arrive with a second resume built entirely on evidence.
So what are the skills that actually matter right now in this AI-driven era? It comes down to these behavioral fundamentals. Adaptability. Can you unlearn a process when the software updates tomorrow? Communication. Can you persuade people and build trust? Because AI certainly can't do that. Problem solving and systems thinking. Understanding how your one specific task impacts the entire business. Digital literacy, meaning you treat AI as a tool to amplify your work, not as a threat. And again, ownership and decision-making. These are the fundamental traits that allow a human being to thrive alongside incredibly powerful technology.
So let's get into the adaptation playbook. Practical actions for the future of work. First up, to the students and fresh graduates listening, stop optimizing for the signals that the previous generation used. Stop hoarding random certificates hoping one is magically going to unlock a job for you. You need to shift your energy. Build independent projects from scratch even if they fail miserably. Document your work publicly on places like GitHub or LinkedIn. Learn how to write and communicate your ideas clearly. Build your evidence. The market is going to reward you for what you can prove you can do, not what you claim you studied.
Now, to the parents and educators, we have to change how we're mentoring the next generation. We need to stop rewarding pure memorization and start rewarding resilience and adaptability. Encourage young people to get practical exposure. Let them struggle a bit and figure things out without relying on a textbook. Facilitate real, messy projects where they actually have to collaborate and communicate under a bit of pressure. We are preparing them for a highly dynamic world, not a static, multiple-choice exam.
And a quick note to my fellow founders, business owners, and HR leaders. We've got to update our evaluation models. We simply cannot rely solely on the pedigree of a university name anymore. We need to actively seek out that second resume. Hire for adaptability. Hire for ownership. Look for the candidates who bring you documented evidence of their problem-solving skills. If we want a resilient workforce, we have to start hiring the people who actually demonstrate resilience.
As we wrap up, I want you to think of a strong root system supporting a growing tree. Technology is going to continue to evolve at an unbelievably rapid pace. Next year, AI will be faster, it'll be smarter, it'll be more integrated into everything we do. But the human fundamentals, trust, judgment, communication, and ownership, they remain surprisingly stable. They are the roots that allow the tree to keep growing, no matter how much the environment changes around it.
I want to leave you with a governing principle for your career. Preparation creates potential, but execution creates evidence. In a world that is completely overflowing with information and automation, the people who learn quickly, adapt continuously, and execute consistently, those are the people who will always remain immensely valuable.
And this brings us to our final thought. The future may not belong to the people who know the most. It may belong to the people who can learn, adapt, and execute before circumstances force them to. Don't wait for certainty, because it's not coming. So the ultimate question you have to ask yourself today is, what evidence are you going to start building tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.